Hello Evertonians and welcome to another episode of the All Together Now podcast, live here at the Bramley Moore Pub on the banks of the Royal Blue Mersey. I'm Tony Scott, Greg O'Keefe is my co-host, and our special guest is Gav Buckland.
Special guest.
Yeah, indeed. He's back with a vengeance. And on this week's episode, we'll be talking about Ademola Lookman's latest future. Now that hangs in the balance. The FC Sion match preview. Also, our chances of the top six next season, and also discuss Gav's new book, which is a must buy. First up, gents, Ademola Lookman's future is in the balance. Now, we've got some interesting news coming from Everton as we speak, just before we recorded, and it reads, Red Bull Leipzig have bid Ademola Lookman 15 million and it's been rejected. Everton want to avoid repeat of last summer's saga, with Leipzig now needing up the bid or walk away from talk. So that's an interesting one in the terms of Ademola Lookman's future. Greg, how do you see this one developing over the next couple of weeks?
It's getting a bit tiresome. We seem to have this same conversation every transfer window at the moment with Lookman. I think it's clear that he's unsettled and wants to move. His attitude, as we've said, several times in this podcast, just never seems quite right. In fact, I think last week we were talking about the fact, or the previous podcast, he just never really seems too happy, does he? He just hasn't. Maybe he'd say he hasn't had the opportunities last season, but either way, maybe he hasn't earned them. Leipzig's been a long-running thing since he went on loan there, and apparently was happy. So, sure enough, they're back in again. And for me, I wouldn't be surprised if Everton do want to do business, but at the right place. And as Paul Joyce, who gets a lot of things right on Everton transfers, has just said, the price is the key. Everton aren't going to be railroads into the business. But what I would say is, do they want this dragging on and on and on? Are they going to have to be realistic on the price and insert a healthy sell-on clause?
Gav, what's your intake on this? Is 15 million too cheap? Will Everton get the likes of 25 million for this player?
Maybe with add-ons, that old adage. Yeah, I think what I get from that is that Everton seem committed to sell, don't they, from that, albeit at the right price. And I think they need the money to fund, players in positions that, on the pitch that we need. So I think that will force our hand in terms of selling him. My reflection on Lookman as a player is that it's defined by that goal against City, isn't it, really? Yeah. Which I didn't really think it did him any favours in the end. And I think his career sort of like defining game after that was at Middlesbrough, I think a couple of months later, where he had the poor game, he missed a couple of chances. I think Ronnie tried a bit of tough love with him and it didn't work. And I think even like the summer of 2017, when he'd only been there 6 months, there was rumblings that he was unhappy and maybe wanted to move, the old homesickness thing. And it's never happened since then. If you're going on loan in the following January, something's up. And he's, for one to several reasons, he's never really sold, has he? By looks at on and off the pitch. And I think that's really sad, because when he first came, he did look a player who could really do well for us. And I think now it's just a case of us thinking, but we need the money to buy players in different parts of the pitch. Make sure we get that money this year, but it's got to be something that's reasonable. It may not be what we want in an ideal scenario, but I think we need to cash this transfer window.
I think what's a shame about it is that he's got bags of ability, isn't he? We've seen in flashes how good he is. I remember him coming on the Merseyside derby and literally changing the game. I know Everton went on to lose the game in the FA Cup, but he come on and absolutely tore the backside out of Liverpool. And you see glimpses of what he's got, even against Manchester City. Really good teams. You go, come on. And you just look at him to take that next step. He has a lot of injuries, don't get me wrong, but I think what you touched on there, Gav, I think is off the field scenario. He just doesn't look to have settled at all throughout his career. No, but I mean, everybody in the Premier League's got a certain level of ability. The difference is whether you can apply that ability on match day, isn't it? And he's somebody who really hasn't been able to do that in a consistent manner. And also has shown no signs of improvement. I mean, if you're at a club 2.5 years in your early 20s or late teens and you're not getting in the squad even, there's a problem. And I think everybody's realised that now, and I think that's reflected in the events of today.
I agree. I think if we hadn't paid not a big fee by any means, but if we hadn't signed him from Charlton, and if he hadn't scored that goal, say he was in the same bracket as Kieran Dowell or Samba Basalu or any of those younger players, Joe Williams, would we be making such a big deal about him? I think it was because we'd brought him in from another club and he seemed to have so much potential, and it is just potential for me. And I agree with you, he's shown flashes of that bags of ability, but not enough. And ultimately, it's about delivering.
But he's had the arm round the shoulder treatment, hasn't he, from managers? He's had the toughness from Koeman. Obviously, Unsworth had a look at him. Allardyce has sent him packing. Now Silva's given really a good chance. And Brands, and I remember Marcel Brands went on record, said these are the guys that we're looking for to Everton's future. So something's obviously not right lately in terms of Ademola Lookman's attitude, because every time I look at him, he seems to always have a sulk on. He's got a cob on. You're going, lad, you've got all the ability you want to have in the world. You're at one of the best football clubs to play for. Go and show the rest of the world how good you are. And it seemed to me as if he's just not happy. And even
I think you might be overstating how much ability he's got.
I think he's got bags of it, Greg. I
haven't seen the evidence.
Well, why does Everton pay the best part of 10 million for him?
It was a risk. It was
from Charlton.
Why did they put Sandro Ramirez on 110 grand a week? And sometimes you take risks in recruitment. I think it sounds like you're overstating how
10 million risks. What was he, 90 at the time?
Yeah, I think it was an educated, because he's young and English, there's always going to be like a decent sell-on fee there, isn't it, which has come to fruition. The one thing we need to bear in mind as well about his fee is that Charlton have got we've got a sell-on clause to pay to Charlton, haven't we? So that's the other thing. A bit like Vlasic as well, was a sell-on clause for Vlasic.
We've got one on Lukaku as well. Hoping he goes.
I think it's 2.5 years, you're not really shown that you can improve, and I think that will be the deciding factor on this. And I just can't stress enough, we need money to spend on other players this transfer window. Is he
the type of player that will come back to haunt Everton in terms of how good he could develop to be?
He could do, and I think that's why it's important to insert as hefty a sell-on clause as you can. It wouldn't. I mean, it's happened to other clubs, hasn't it? Yeah. Chelsea have had the fingers burnt with players in that respect. Man City to a lesser extent, but sometimes you've just got to take the risk, haven't you?
Gav, do you have any thoughts on that one?
It doesn't really bother me at this stage. I think as long as we've got a sell-on clause, if he does well elsewhere, well, that's fair enough. I mean, English players have thrived to a degree, haven't they, overseas in the Bundesliga in particular, so he could well do it, but it's been really disappointing for me. When he first came, scored that goal, he just has not really kicked on. And from an early stage, he did appear to be unhappy, and I think that stayed ever since. I've not got a problem looking moody on the pitch, by the way. Richarlison doesn't look
but you can see his persona around the club. You look at his Instagram, you look at his Twitter, he's full of joys, he's embracing with fans, swapping shirts, signing autographs. You can see he's always got a smile on his face after the match. Lookman has got none of that whatsoever. Even the first day of training last week, he's got the players are mingling in with together, the talking. Maybe I'm looking far too much into it.
He could be nervous.
He's been there 2.5 years.
People are different, aren't they? He could be introspective. He could be full of anxiety about going to a club he doesn't want to be at anymore. You can't judge a player just off body language. I take your point because I've agreed with you previously. The more I think about it now, we don't know enough about him as an individual, or enough about the extent of his ability to really say whether or not he's going to be the one that got away, or just a player we've been talking about for far too long. Personally, I think it might be the latter.
I mean, the other thing I would say is we've got several players in that sort of age bracket who are on the periphery of the first team, and you could have the conversation we're having about Lookman, you could probably have about 5, 6, 7 other players.
Dowell, there's another one.
You could even have extended to Calvert-Lewin, Tom Davis, Williams who's not played for the first team.
Don't be lumping Lookman and Calvert-Lewin in with him. He'll be
going. We mentioned Kevin Mirallas in a minute.
Don't. We're even coming to him shortly.
But we've got players of that age, and sort of are on the periphery, of which you could argue that several of them should be following the same route. To be fair,
why is that? Why should?
Well, because A, I think we need the money, and B, whether they're good enough to play in the first team or a first team that's capable of challenging for top 6, like we're going to discuss about later on. And I think you could probably make a case for 6 or 7 players that are in that Lookman type territory at the moment.
From one sulky winger to another.
I can play on the wing.
Kevin Mirallas looks to have come back to Finch Farm, and obviously he's on the flight to Switzerland. In my opinion, I know you're desperate to hear it, I can't, not for the life of me, understand why he's on the plane. It's just a total waste of a flight, a seat, a waste of training kit. Everton don't want him. He doesn't want to be there. Rumours are circulating that he wants to go back to Belgium. Yeah. That's what we're hearing. And it's just a waste of everyone's time. Just get him off the books. His attitude stinks. Is everything about him as a footballer in this generation just winds you up about him. He really does. And the sooner he's out the club, the better for me. And how he's involved in the squad, because there's going to be a lot of young players looking at him in this squad, in Switzerland, working, and if they see him as an example, trotting around the pitch and throwing his dummy out, well, that doesn't sit right with me. It really doesn't sit right with me. And I think it's a total waste of time and going on the flight.
What I would say, you know, when you said about, like, so it's going to be talking about Kevin Mirallas, I thought we'll have to extend this by 15 minutes so Tony can get his rant out.
We'll have a special on him.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, but we've got to keep him fit, haven't we? We've got to keep him visible if we're going to move him on. But I agree. His attitude has left a lot to be desired over the last 4 or 5 years, particularly since he was after the move was to Spurs at one stage in 2013, 14, if you think about it. And since then, nothing. And it's a shame, really, for all you can criticise him and his attitude, is that there's a player in Mirallas, but he's another one who's not done himself justice, and I will not be shedding any tears if he moves on.
No, Greg?
Yeah, I mean, you'd like to hope at the very least he's professional. We've seen evidence, haven't we? And that's what you're getting about is kind of lackadaisical, half-hearted efforts in warm-ups and stuff like that.
I think there was a discussion with David Unsworth that time as well, when he one of the players that was obviously murmured to have caused rictions behind the scenes.
Yeah, but it's dragged on to, again, it's one that's dragged on too long. Probably not through the club's, entirely through the club's making. He's, inexplicably, you're going to make me repeat the thing I've said about 8 billion times, but inexplicably the club gave him a contract. Remember the chairman announcing it on the stage, whether it was to protect the asset, as sometimes it is, whatever it was, it's backfired on them now.
Oh, big time.
And they're saddled with him. I think he's saddled with being here. He obviously wants to move. They want him out. I would like to hope his professionalism ensures that he at least puts a shift in Sion in the next few days, because as Gav said, it's important for him that he's fit. So he passes, well, you'd imagine he'd pass medical, but he looks sharp enough, and new clubs, are alert to him.
The new clubs have had a look at him on loan. He's been to several clubs. How many managers has he seen off for Everton? David Moyes signed him. You've got Martin Edge, you've got Koeman, Unsworth, Allardyce, Silva.
You've got to remember, he was a half-decent player for a while under Moyes until it all came tumbling down.
Was he? He was in flashes.
No, I think his career turned on one incident, wasn't it? It was the penalty against it was
West
Brom, wasn't it? And then from that point on, his career went into sort of a little bit of free fall. Yeah. I thought he had the potential to be a great player. He could go either way. He could play in the middle. He could play out wide.
Score goals.
Good finisher. He had all the tools to be a top player. But like, dare I say, some Belgian players, his attitude's not hasn't been the greatest.
Well, on the pitch this weekend we play FC Sion. That's a Sunday 4 p.m. kick-off. Mirallas will be there. Sadly, we won't. What are you looking for out this game, Greg, considering what happened last week against Karabanghi Sharks? The first team obviously played the first half, weren't the sharpest, so to speak. Really sluggish. Second half, under-23s come on, look sharper, physical, and give them a game. So in terms of this game as well, we're looking for a lot better, aren't we?
We are. And again, you only take so much notice of results at this time of the season. And I know you covered the game for us on Twitter on ATN, and so you watched, as you've just neatly summarised, very much a game of two halves. No one's going to get too aerated about performances at this stage, but you do want to see a shift. You want to see a team that are trying the best to get back to full match fitness. Ideally, you'd want to see your new faces getting some much needed pre-season into the legs. It's seeming that's not going to be. I mean, we did speak to me right at the end of the season about one of the important things, and it's a bit of a fancy now, because let's face it very rarely happens. Get your new players in early. Easier said than done, I know. But time's kicking on. The new season starts in probably about a month, just a bit over a month, and it looks like it's going to be sort of last couple of weeks, last week, last day business again. But we're not the only ones. Yeah, I want to see effort, and I want to see signs of improving fitness. I don't want to see what I probably will see, and that's what you said before we started recording, Oumar Niasse up front.
Well, this is the concern now, isn't it, Gab? Everton are going to go into 2 matches over the next best parts of 7 or 8 days. FC Sion and Monaco, with Oumar Niasse as the only recognised striker. You've got Cenk Tosun, obviously injured. Dominic Calvert-Lewin is on holiday. This is a massive concern We'll be at 4 weeks away from the season?
Well, it's a reflection on how a bit of a mess pre-season is now for all clubs, isn't it? With football being a virtual 12-month of the year game, you got the AFCON still going on, isn't it? And it's the end of the previous season while we're preparing for the next season. It's also it's nonsense in some degree. And you got because you got players who are still homegrown, Calvert-Lewin side, something like that. As you say, who is still on holiday or easing way back, and if you're a manager, it must be really frustrating because ideally on pre-season, on first day, you want everybody there, don't you? Build a bit of team spirit or whatever that means, get your plans right, and you've got players now who will be coming back maybe a fortnight before the season starts. Well, how can you possibly plan and get a coordinated approach if that's the case? And this is a classic example of that, isn't it, really, where for a number of reasons we're left with Nias. He was another one in the Mirallas, not in terms of his attitude, but you want to move on. And Nias is our sole option up front, and it's ludicrous. And it shows you our lack of forward options. When I was talking about needing to sell Lookman to generate cash, one of the things we need to do with that cash is buy a striker, as far as I'm concerned. And so therefore, when you're asking Greg about what to expect, I don't really know what to expect because I haven't got a clue where we're up to, and neither probably is the manager, because we've got all sorts coming back and tips and drabs.
So how can Silva work with this team then? Is he just looking for basically fitness than formations, more than team spirit? Is he just looking for pure fitness from these two games?
It's hard for him, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Just fitness, isn't it? I don't think there'll be a 22-0, but it'd be nice, wouldn't it? But it's just that's all you can say is fitness and making sure players don't get injured.
Well, you mentioned, Gav, majority of Premier League clubs will be in the same boat as Everton in terms of players still on, obviously, African nations and obviously what we've seen with Brazil in the final last week. But not many football clubs who are looking to get into the top six will have the strikers of Everton's calibre, where Everton are obviously now, they haven't replaced Romelu Lukaku for that long. So this is where the likes of Arsenal have Aubameyang and Lacazette coming through, and obviously Manchester United have got Lukaku and Rashford coming. Everton aren't blessed with strikers, so are they feeling the brunt now of the previous regimes gone by where they haven't replaced Romelu Lukaku? Because there may have been one or two
perhaps, certainly last season. I think, but again, it goes back to cash and how much we've got and needing to balance the books, doesn't it? And it's been quite obvious over the last 12 months to buy players, we need to get rid of them. And we started that process last year, but the only way we can do that during this summer is by getting rid of players for decent fees. And I don't think Lookman will be, if he does go, whether he won't be the last out the door.
Just got a bit of ATM breaking news for you there.
Go for us.
Courtesy of our friend behind the camera. PSG have made, according to L'Equipe, I should say, PSG have made €30 million bid. And I was just going to mention this fella about how well he'd done on scoring front in the AFCON. Idrissa Gueye. Idrissa Gueye, €30 million bid, according to L'Equipe. Now,
they can be quite vague,
up and down,
in terms of sources.
Like his shot accuracy. However,
weren't that the other night, by the way?
No, it wasn't. It's been coming, this, hasn't it? If it's true, he's going to go.
They can be very vague, because in French, so it's very vague to me. No, but he's another player, isn't he, that if the offer is right, I think you should consider selling.
I don't think so.
No, because he's 20. What is he? 29. I mean, no, the offer is but he's 29. A good fee to reinvest in the team, because I still don't think. We've been doing pods about Idrissa Gueye for a few years. You know my view, but I've got a little bit of a weak spot like you have with Mirallas. I still don't think the balance in the midfield is right with Idrissa Gueye and Gomez in midfield. I prefer a holding midfielder, a la Schneiderlin, Gomez playing more a box-to-box role, and Gylfi or somebody similar up front. They're all thereabouts, behind the strikers. And Idrissa Gueye, 29. If you're Silva thinking I'll be here 3 or 4 years maybe on my contract, he's going to be 32 when I finish my contract. He's probably not going to be...
That's no age in this... the way football is now, it's no age.
It is.
Fernandinho, 34, one of the best midfielders in the league.
They're replacing him. That's why they're saying Rodri.
Yeah, but he's 34. Idrissa Gueye, 29.
I get that, but the age is different. But is he going to be the same play in 2-3 years' time when I can get good money for him now?
I'm not interested in money. I'm interested in keeping our best players. Adesina Gueye is one of our better players.
Hold on.
How is he? Because one of the best clubs in the world is willing to pay 30 odd million for 29-year-olds.
Yeah,
that's right. So do we.
Yeah,
How do we replace him?
I
How do we replace someone
attributes
of his ability and what he does?
But how many players? How many teams give themselves the luxury of having somebody who's basically a midfield? I've seen him described as midfield destroyer today, which is not necessarily.
It's unfair on last season.
As somebody who's a tackling midfielder,
but he's not just that. We've seen last season under Silva, he weren't just that. He was advancing forward a lot towards the back end of last season.
Yeah, but I want a midfielder who can do that better, who's more constructive with the ball.
But we're not going to get one who's outside the top six.
We've got one, Gomez.
That's what I want to see Gomez play, that role.
Do you see Gomez putting out fires and tackling people and winning the ball back better than anyone in the league? No, you don't.
You don't necessarily need that, though, do you? If you've got somebody who plays deeper in a more defensive role, you don't necessarily need that.
You do, because if we haven't got the players to keep hold of the ball as well as your Tottenhams, your Man Cities, your Liverpool. So we have to go and get a player to win the ball off them. So we can't go into a match with Andre Gomez and Tom Davies. Prime example: Everton played Tottenham last season.
Yeah,
with two ball players. I think it's just a kind of guy was injured, wasn't he?
Yeah,
if I remember rightly.
We set up wrong, didn't we?
And basically they had two ball midfielders, and Tottenham were just.
We set up wrong against their time, didn't we?
That was it.
But I'd say again, when weighing all that up against an offer of big bucks by PSG, then you're obliged to consider it. And I've said this all along. Gomez and Adesina Gueye, two midfielders last year. What was it? One assist, one goal between them in 60 odd Premier League games. Do you want that off two players? Would you rather have sacrifice? Well, you're going to have to sacrifice Adesina Gueye now to get Gomez further up the pitch and play somebody a little bit further back. Because I think both of them are duplicating the effort a little bit, and I think we're paying the price for that, especially against teams that are weaker than us, where we need a bit more creativity in midfield. If we're playing Man United, Liverpool or Chelsea or Man City, then you can get away with it. But playing against 13 other Premier League teams, I don't think we can have the luxury of those two players.
Liverpool blessed with centre midfielders that scored and assist.
Yeah, but they've got
Fabinho, Henderson.
They've got 325 goal a season, 30 goal a season players up front. We haven't. So we need our midfielders to do a bit more.
So if Everton was to sign Neres, so to speak, or Malcolm, and then you've got Richarlison chipping in with 15, Sigurdsson chipping in with 15, your centre forward chipping in with 15, and then obviously Malcolm, then that justifies them.
I'd argue then you need somebody with a bit more creativity in the midfield to feed them. But at the moment, one of the reasons why we didn't score last year is because our creativity from deep in midfield wasn't as good as what it should have been, especially against the smaller teams. Against the bigger teams where we sit back, I'm fine with that. But we consistently failed to perform last year against teams who set up defensively against us because limited creativity in midfield, and that's because we had two players who I thought last year duplicated each other's roles. Adesina Gueye, don't get me wrong, he's got great attributes, but when he's against his age and the fee that could be paid, I still think I would sell.
I just want to make the point as well, as much as I can see actually from both sides what you're saying, is it not a bit redundant? Because I feel as if loyalty might be an outdated concept in football, but they said to him in January when PSG, the club he's wanted to play for all his life, so we're told, came in for him, we're not going to sell you, give us the rest of the season. He got his head down, he knuckled down, and he was fantastic for the remaining however many months of the season. Is it now incumbent on us to do the right thing, and if they come in with an offer that's acceptable, and that's a different story by the way, to let him go? Or has there even been an agreement with his agent?
That's the thing.
Along those lines,
it does happen, doesn't it?
It happens, doesn't it?
It's what has happened with Liverpool.
Can't fault him between January and May last year. That is, his attitude, and as you say, Tony, his performance has actually improved. I'm just seeing the bigger picture in terms of the team as a whole, and I go back to what I was saying. I'd still like, I know this like heresy, Schneiderlin defensive midfielder, Gomez box to box, Sigurdsson.
So 30 million on the table. Lookman, keep or sell. Sorry, not Lookman, Adesina Gueye.
I've just said that before. Yeah,
so,
not for the fee and the age and the way we need to build the team.
Greg,
I'd allow him to go.
No. you keep your best players, because I don't think personally we will get better than them in that position.
But we don't need one in that position. But that's just
that's for the pod we've just discussed.
This is where, and just sorry, this is where you've got to. I keep saying this as well. Put your faith in Brands.
Oh yeah, of course.
To get better than, if you know what I mean.
And by the way, I hope Fabian Delph's not the replacement.
Oh, so do I, by the way.
Well, I was going to mention that. Yeah, injury prone. He's played left back, hasn't he, for 3 years?
He's not going to get a left back change at Everton either.
Well, you know where I see some people, what Tony's saying is, if they're talking about selling him, say for argument, ignore what I said about the loyalty aspect or a deal being sort of half agreed. If they let him go and then they bring in the likes of Delph or Danny Drinkwater, then that actually I would be a bit cheesed off there, because you're letting a better player go to replace them with not as good players. I'm not saying they're poor players.
It sends a bad sign out,
but they're not as good. Yeah, so
I agree with that. If it's the selling of Ghana Gueye depends on that we get somebody in who I think that's who we would like to buy with the money.
Fair play.
Fair play. Let's see what happens with the Ghana Gueye's future. Chances of the top 6 next season then, having said what we all threw into the mix there, in discussions with Arsenal obviously. What's going on with their captain at the moment? He's another player who's obviously so he's out the pram. Manchester United's not all going to plan their pre-season with the likes of Romelu Lukaku, Paul Pogba. Have Everton got a better chance of getting into that top 6 rather? See, top 4 by the way. Who knows? Top 6 this season.
They sell it to Ghana Gueye, No, seriously, I don't look at it that way. The way I look at it is set ourselves a points target and then see where that takes us.
It's like a manager, isn't he?
We can't, I'll be over the moon if we do that. But we can't.
Can you do that though, Gav?
Yeah, I think for us,
the season we finished 4th, there was a low points tally, wasn't it? With the season we finished 4th, and there's Liverpool finished 2nd on 97 points. But can you actually do that?
We finished 72. Didn't we on Martinez's first season?
And didn't get in top 4.
And that would have got us in the top 4 last season.
So can you?
But you can only do as well as what you can in the season. What other clubs do is really beyond you, beyond your control. I personally think that if we get our recruitment right in the summer and we build on, good ends of last season. In fact, there's the stat. The last 8 games of last season, I think we got 17 points. That was the most over the last 8 games of the season since the last time we won the title.
Wow.
In 87. So we finished last season really strongly against so-called big teams that you're talking about there as well. So, and this is like what I'm saying is about pre-season being so stagnated. You lose some of that momentum, don't you? From an end finishing the end of the season. Well, you lose it. So roundabout way here. I was saying this, set ourselves a points target, and I think we can easily get 65 to 70 next season. What we get last year was a 54 or something like that.
Yeah, we were in the mid-50s.
We can easily get 10 points more than last year.
The games we chucked away, early doors. And even that bad run after the derby.
Yeah, and I think 65 to 70, see where it takes us. I think that'll get you into the top 6.
Can Everton break into the top 6, Greg?
It's frustrating, isn't it, hearing Gav say that stat there, to think that we finished in such vibrant form, beating all sorts of top sides, and then you just
don't want the season to end.
You don't want it to end.
Yeah.
And if anything, you pray that we can almost treat it as half time and start the new campaign in the same sort of form. But unfortunately, we know that life's not always like that, and there's a million and one things, like Gueye going, by the way, that will affect or could affect that momentum. Let's hope it doesn't, because wow, if we could get off to a flyer and avoid, we're going to have a sticky spell in the season, aren't we? But if we can avoid making one result really damage our hopes, like it did with the derby last season.
Yeah,
and we were incredibly unlucky at times last season. Yeah, who knows? Personally, I think we can finish in the top 6.
And the fixtures are there for us to start.
And it's all about momentum. All about momentum. I mean, one thing I'm comforted more this season than last is we've got a bit more of an idea of Silva as a manager, haven't we? Both in terms of the way that he sets up his team. But I think crucially last year, as you say about that bad run, but we got out of that bad run. So we had like the sort of personality in the wherewithal to drag us out of that. And so I'm far more comfortable now if we did have a bad run, that would get out of it, or it wouldn't last as long. And I think if we can get the 5 or 6 games up until mid-late September, all winnable, but you know what happens there, and I can see ourselves, maybe even if we get in the top 6 at the end of September, you've got someone to keep up with, which is really what happened in 2004, wasn't it, where we were 5, where we were in the top 4 till Christmas, then absolutely dire after Christmas. But you just sort of do enough, don't you? That motivation's there to stay there, to get over the line. And I think if we can get ourselves into the top 6 by the end of September, thereabouts, I think gives that little bit of edge, doesn't it?
Do you know what as well? You mentioned obviously United, who've got issues on the horizon or right now. You mentioned obviously Arsenal having problems. Chelsea could go either way. Yeah. New manager, a lot of pressure on Lampard. I like Lampard, so I hope he's not sacked by January or sooner. But it could happen, couldn't it? It's a mad club sometimes with obviously the way it's run up top. You know, no transfer ban on them, so that's going to affect them, you would imagine, to an extent. So there's 3 clubs really that could oscillate in and out of the top 6, you know, next season, and give us an opportunity to get in.
There's an argument that Tottenham have got to rebuild, haven't they, Jordan? The summer, you know, so,
get over their disappointments.
So that top 4, so that might be. No, but seriously, you're looking at it, and obviously the top 2 are way ahead, and you expect them to be the same this year. But and they talk about the big 6, but in one given season, you can easily get into the top 6. You know, if the struggle, if you have a really good season and you invest as well, like we hopefully have, and a couple of others struggle, then you can get in the top 6 for the season, and that's what we want to do, don't we? And then do enough to stay there.
Leicester will be saying the same.
How much does Leicester worry you? What they're doing, what they're spending?
Yeah, I like the look of Leicester. If they can keep Maguire, I think that's a big one for them. I think it's the message it sends out as well. If they keep hold of him, I think that's a big statement that they're in the mix for top 6. If they don't, I think how are they replacing him?
Yeah, I know she'll be saying this, but I like Rodgers as a coach. I think they're an ideal team for him. You know, like the sort of, as you say, strong at the back to keep Maguire, which is always his weak spot at Liverpool, wasn't it?
Can Vardy continue to score them goals again?
Yeah,
It'll be interesting.
Yeah, so I think
Wolves will be in Europe as well.
Yeah, well, we were talking about that. Not being in Europe in terms of answering this question is an advantage, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'd still rather be in Europe though.
Of course, we were on this many times on the podcast last season. We were barking on get in Europe because I'm sick and tired of not going to these great away trips, and obviously, and we are envious and jealous of Liverpool supporters travelling all around Europe and watching their team, and that's what we want. And in order for us to attract better players, like say for argument's sake, where if Stoke when just a guy is sold, we haven't got that. If a player is choosing between Wolves and Everton, he's going to be going to Wolves. The only reason Everton can do it is about how financial for Moshiri's money, and that's the only reason how they could do it. Because if I was a player and I was coming to the Premier League and I didn't know anything about Everton or Wolves, and I go, right, where does Everton finish? Where does Wolves finish? Obviously, you're taking to the financial concept. Who's paying me the most? But if Everton and Wolves were paying exactly the same, who's in Europe? Who's not? You're going to take Wolves now.
I'm not sure about that.
Why?
Because I think.
Do you think players look into the history of a football club when they
look at the future for a start, and I think Everton. You don't realise that we are a big club when you look at other clubs how they regard us. You know, like the Wolves and Watfords and Leicester and this way. We are a big club across the way there. We've got a new stadium on the horizon. So, if you're looking at like players and say, well, actually, who am I going to do better with over the next 3 or 4 years? You'd be looking at us probably more than any other team outside the top 6. So you got other things come into it, like geography don't need London clubs and all this type of stuff. And you know, something like language of the managers, you speak the same language, and all those are different factors.
Agents, Mendes, obviously.
So there's a lot of factors go into it rather than just money. And ambition is one of them. And I think if you're an ambitious player, you'd want to join Everton above any other team outside the top 6 at the moment. And hopefully that proves to be, you know, right with our transfer dealings in the summer.
Interesting.
To be honest with you, there's an argument to say that some of the clubs in the top 6 would a bit, a bit combustible at the moment.
You might want to James Maddison, didn't you? Yeah. Like obviously his future, you were saying if Maddison was to sign for Manchester United, and you're going, well, why would he? There's an argument to say Leicester have got a better chance of
absolutely
getting the top 6.
In the short term, but again, in the longer term, maybe not. So there's lots of different factors that go into making the decision. But you underestimate the way people regard us and the size of our club at your peril. We are a big club.
Is it mine and Greg's generation that obviously we think Everton are the best and everything else? Is it our generation that don't see it like that? Because in terms of success-wise, we can't see us. Like I had an argument with my dad a couple of months ago.
Makes a change, doesn't it? Yeah.
He was saying Everton a miles better, bigger club than Tottenham. bigger club, far bigger. Tottenham haven't won the league since the 50s, done nothing. And I went, Dad, but you've got to relate to guys who were like, even young Evertonians, 16, 17, 18 now, who sit in the Gladys Street. They don't see it like that. They'll see Tottenham constantly in the Champions League with bigger and better players and big stadiums, etc. I know ours is coming up, but they won't see it like that. They go, no, and he wouldn't have it. And I was trying to put him in this. Listen, generations move on. Manchester City weren't a big club 20 years ago, but now they're huge.
Yeah, it depends what you define as a big club. You can have several podcasts about that, isn't it? But there's the size of your ground dictates it, how many trophies you want dictate it. You know, there's so many different things. But we are a big club if you look at a combination of, you know, your size of your support, the number of trophies that you've won, being in the Premier League throughout its tenure, you know. So those things together still make us a big club as far as I'm concerned. Maybe not compared to some of the other clubs you mentioned there, but in terms of like clubs outside the top six, absolutely massive, you know.
Well, we were definitely a big club in the 60s.
I see what this is huge.
What a link. What a pro.
What a link.
And our man has decided to put pictures onto print.
Yeah.
So, Gav, tell us about this new book.
Yes, it's called Money Can't Buy Us Love, and it's a story about when Everton were undoubtedly a big club. Some would say arguably the biggest club and certainly the richest club in Britain.
You've done this to wind me and Greg up, haven't you?
No. It's before my time as well, by the way. Yeah, well, a lot of it. And it's a story about Everton's rise under Harry Catterick, funded by the John Moore's Littlewoods Millions in the 60s, and the story goes right through to Catterick's departure in 1973. So it's still Everton in the 60s. That's really like generally that's true, but it goes up to 73, and it's a story of when we were like the sort of Chelsea of the time. You know, when Abramovich first came in and everybody hated Chelsea, and there's still that little bit of residual stuff going on there, isn't it, Chelsea? And everybody hated us.
Was that the case?
Yeah, and that's why the title Money Can't Buy Us Love. That for all the money that people throughout the country hated us, not just for the money reasons. There was quite a few little incidents, you know, hooliganism, a few tabloid tales.
They all in the book, Gav?
Pardon?
They all
are unexpurgated, held nothing back. And because I didn't want to write it like a sort of like all good stuff and Everton great and all this, I've shined a light on a lot of the darker stuff that went on during the decade involving us, for the simple reason that it justifies the title, and it was one of the reasons why for all our money it couldn't buy us love. So it's a tale set also as well. The 60s was such a, you know, as you know, a decade of massive change anyway, culturally, politically, economically, and certainly culturally Liverpool was at the forefront of that, obviously, for obvious reasons. And it's all set in those tumultuous times. You know, it was obviously, well, I wasn't living there at the time, a great time to live in the city. And the rise of Everton and Liverpool under Bill Shankly sort of was nicely in tune, you know, within that environment. And it goes on to tell our tale of 2 league titles, 1 FA Cup win, and lots of other very interesting stuff around the club and around the city and around the Times as a whole.
A league title, what does one of them look like?
we had some exceptional players in that year.
Oh yeah.
Flicking through it before we started to record, Alan Ball, Alec Young, I mean, you can just go, but Bobby Collins.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Brian LeBone, but who, like, I know again, with the taking into the fact that you weren't allowed, what's it?
I've seen Alan Ball, yeah.
Who would you say was the finest player who pulled on a Royal Blue shirt
in that time? Yeah. That's a good question.
It's a hard one. Alan Ball must be up there.
I think you'd have to say Alan Ball, wouldn't you? As you know, for 4 or 5 years. But I say in the book about Brian LeBone, who was like a massive presence for Everton over 3 decades. He was sort of like the glue that kept, you know, the dressing room together. And I say in the book that his role as like Everton's chief supporter and chief cheerleader over the years has like sort of deflected the fact that he was a magnificent footballer for us and for his country as well later on in the decade. And although I would say Alan Ball over the period, the time of the book, then I'd say LeBone, and I'd say that it was no coincidence that when Labby started getting injuries in the early 70s, that's when the decline under Katsik started, because he was sort of the senior pro that kept everything together, Katsik's first lieutenant. And Alan Ball, best player, biggest influence behind the bone.
As you delved into, obviously, the archives to find out as much as you can about that era, Gav, was there anything that surprised you?
Lots of it. Yeah, that's a very good question. Because you think you know about the club, but you don't really. It's only when
if you don't know about this club, there's not way
exactly. Yeah, but I think going back
without giving it away, obviously.
No, I think what I'd say is how much we were hated.
Yeah.
How much we were hated in the media, you know, especially when set at the side against that. Liverpool was quite a trendy place to like, you know, in the mid 60s. How much we were hated, and people thought that we bought the title, and you know, with our first title in '63 because we spent so much money on players. But as I discuss in the book, what we've learned since then is, and going back to some of the themes inside, you can have lots of money in football, doesn't guarantee you anything. You've got to be able to apply that. And the title at the time, you were criticised because people just thought, we spend I think that the squad cost like £300,000, which is like a fortune then. That if you bought a squad that's £300,000, you win the title. But what we know now is what it also needs is good management, good organisation off the pitch and that type of stuff. And that was lost at the time. But yeah, I think that's the main thing. How everybody hated us. There was nothing to be said positive about Everton unless you lived in Merseyside.
That's part of success though in general, isn't it?
Yeah, but I think also
football,
I think there was that. There was
jealousy.
I think there was maybe not so much in the modern era. It was still like the Northern Southern press bias then.
Was it?
Yeah. So the Southern press was very much, ironically enough, Tottenham had a great team then, and the Southern press loved Tottenham, you know. And
still do
to a degree, yeah. But then they were the main team, and so that's where Dad was right. And they were the big team, won the double in '61, and so Everton got a lot of stick from the Southern press in particular, and there was, and even Howard Kendall would say the same in the mid '80s, that there was still a lot of bias even then, and I say in the book that. We say now that sometimes we don't get our due as a club and all that type of stuff. Say finishing 4th in 2005, and I think some of it is still as a consequence of what went on in the 60s.
Is it? Yeah.
Yeah, I discussed that in some detail. That there's still some residual type ignorance or I wouldn't say hatred now, obviously, but a little bit of setting Everton aside. You know, that still happens to this day. And we've not really done a lot to change it in that time, really.
I love there is a generation I would have loved to have lived in, obviously with the Beatles still at the forefront of Liverpool, and Everton being so successful. And I've even seen the documentary, the Golden Vision documentary, and I look at how they watched Everton, and then they travelled up and down the country, and the way they just lived for Everton. It was just at the forefront of every terraced house in Merseyside, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, this is what's lost in the modern era. It's like people see the success of like the two clubs in the city now, if you live outside, and people think that Liverpool is traditionally the big club, and that's how it wasn't for the first 80 years in Merseyside football. Everton, bigger crowds, more trophies, won more derby matches than Liverpool. We were traditionally the biggest club, treated with the reverence as founder of the Football League, you know, and people forget that. And I think that I discussed that aspect of it, you know, in some detail. And we just were the bigger club on Merseyside, and probably, you know, you'd argue probably with Arsenal and Man United the three biggest clubs in England. And you know, there's lots of things to discuss from the social side that I've talked about in the book.
When's it out, Gav?
It's out. I think it's about 8th of August, but you can pre-order on Amazon, and the Cubertan Books, who've kindly done it, you can purchase it via their website. That was to be other promotional activities during the next few months.
Money can't buy us love.
Yeah, exactly.
It does look the part.
It looks fantastic.
Everton in the 1960s.
I like obviously the font of the Beatles.
Yeah.
I like the front cover. That's obviously the 6-6 cup final. I think it captures the sort of essence of the decade. Yeah. Everton at Wembley. Colour was just sort of starting then on television and things like that. And the Radio Times, the advert on the front was Wembley was quite iconic. in a way, so it captures the flavour of the times as well, and hopefully the book does as well.
The forefront of John Moore's.
Yeah. Well, he was ahead of his time. John Moores, he was 40, 50 years ahead of his time, and the Moores influence, still here in football in the city.
Just make sure you go out and buy a copy when it is released. Blues, hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you did, give us a thumbs up on YouTube and give us a subscribe. Obviously, we're on Twitter and Facebook too. Thanks for tuning in on the All Together Now podcast.